What happens when you finally ignore a narcissist? Many people assume that silence is the final cure for dealing with a narcissist. That once you stop responding, once you block their number, once you walk away in quiet defiance, you will immediately feel free. But psychology paints a more complex picture. In reality, when you ignore a narcissist, you are not cutting their power completely. Instead, you may be stirring the storm within them. Research shows that when narcissists feel unseen or disregarded, their stress hormones surge, their emotions destabilize, and their behavior often becomes more erratic. It is not the end of their control. It is the intensification of it. And here lies the puzzle. You, who thought you had broken free, suddenly feel more exhausted than liberated. Why is this the case? The exhaustion you feel does not mean you made the wrong decision. It means you are confronting the invisible battlefield of your own nervous system. Silence disrupts the predictable patterns of the narcissist, but it also places you in a new state of uncertainty. On the surface, you thought you had achieved victory. Finally, I have done it. I walked away. I have reclaimed my strength. Yet instead of relief, you feel the weight of questions pressing in. Why does it still hurt? Why does freedom feel so tiring? From a psychological perspective, this happens because your body is bracing for the retaliation it subconsciously expects. Silence, though powerful, unsettles the established dynamic, and your mind prepares itself for possible counterattacks. And this is from a psychologist's perspective. At this stage, self-care is not a luxury, it is a necessity. When you feel drained after choosing silence, understand that your exhaustion is a normal stress response. Practice grounding rituals such as deep breathing, journaling your emotions, or speaking with a trusted therapist or mentor. These practices help calm the nervous system, so your silence transforms from a defensive wall into a conscious boundary rooted in peace. Now let us look more closely at what happens on the other side. Ignoring a narcissist cuts directly into their greatest fear: irrelevance. This fear does not cause them to humbly retreat. More often, it provokes retaliation. Sometimes it appears in subtle manipulations, messages that sound innocent, reminders of old memories, or sudden concern for your well-being. At other times, it erupts explosively: anger, accusations, or dramatic gestures to pull you back into their orbit. So beneath the surface, what seems like silence is not the end of the story, but the beginning of a new psychological game. And this is according to a psychologist's view. When retaliation comes, whether quietly or loudly, remember that engagement is their invitation. The best strategy is to maintain clarity. If you feel the urge to respond with "leave me alone," or to meet them for one last conversation, pause and ask yourself, am I seeking closure from someone who has never offered it before? Closure from a narcissist rarely arrives, because their aim is not mutual understanding, but control. Instead, create your own closure. Write an unsent letter, articulate your feelings to a safe confidant, or speak your truth in therapy. By doing so, you unburden your heart without giving the narcissist another thread to pull. Over the years, I have spoken with many individuals who say, "I've walked away, I've blocked them, but still they return. What should I do?" Some even confess that the temptation to respond grows stronger with silence, as if answering might finally end the cycle. This, my friends, is the trap. Silence is not merely the absence of words. It is the presence of inner resolve. If your silence is filled with fear and longing, the narcissist will sense it and try to exploit it. But if your silence is grounded in clarity, it becomes unshakable. This is from a psychologist's perspective. Strengthen your silence by anchoring it in purpose. Remind yourself daily of why you walked away. Write down the pain you endured, the confusion you lived through, and the cost to your mental health. Then pay this memory with a vision of the life you are building without them. In doing so, your silence ceases to be an empty void and becomes a fertile ground where your healing can grow. So, what truly happens when you ignore a narcissist? On their side, chaos brews. On your side, challenges rise. But the true question is not whether they will change. It is whether you will allow their chaos to dictate your peace. Silence is not simply a punishment for them. It is an initiation for you. It is the beginning of reclaiming your sovereignty, of training your mind and heart to live without depending on their validation. And when your silence is rooted in wisdom, it ceases to be a heavy burden and becomes a sanctuary, a sacred space where you meet yourself again. This is the essence of empowerment, not in silencing them alone, but in transforming your silence into strength, clarity, and freedom. That is where true healing begins. I completely understand why walking away from a narcissist is never as simple as people on the outside think it is. The very first hurdle is the decision itself, a decision heavy with love, hope, and disbelief. You love this person. You held on to the fragile hope that perhaps they were not who you feared they might be, that maybe this label of narcissism did not truly apply to them. And then, when the truth unfolds, it hits with the force of betrayal. To finally accept that the person you trusted is indeed narcissistic is not just a realization. It is a shock to the soul. For many, it is the first time encountering such a personality up close. The mind, bewildered, begins to study. You read books, watch endless videos, tune into podcasts, seeking explanations, patterns, even secret keys to the mystery. And slowly, without even intending it, you become an expert, not because you wanted the title, but because survival demanded it. Small Blue Diamond Psychologist Perspective. This stage is both painful and empowering. The pain comes from shattered expectations, the empowerment from gaining knowledge. Yet knowledge alone is not enough. The real step forward is to couple this knowledge with compassion for yourself. Allow yourself to grieve, for grief acknowledges the love and time invested. Journaling these emotions or processing them with a therapist can help transform the raw shock into understanding. So the label narcissist does not remain a wound but becomes a map that guides you toward healing. But of course, the journey does not end with the decision to leave. A new challenge emerges. What happens after I walk away? Common sense tells us it should be straightforward. You leave, they let you go, and life moves on. In some cases, yes, they do let you go, but rarely in peace. Instead, the letting go comes with undercurrents of tension, unfinished business, and subtle hooks thrown your way. Silence may last for a season, but for most people, the narcissist eventually resurfaces, whether through a message, a sudden reminder, or dramatic reappearance. What you are entering, my friends, is not merely the end. It is what we call the aftermath. Small Blue Diamond Psychologist Perspective. The aftermath is where the real test begins. It is not simply about breaking contact, but about sustaining the boundary you have set. Narcissists often view silence not as closure but as a challenge, a door left ajar for their return. To prepare, you must strengthen your support systems, friends who understand, communities that validate your experience, or professionals who can help you decode the manipulation. Boundary maintenance is not about rigid anger. It is about steady clarity. Remind yourself daily, their resurfacing does not mean my decision was wrong. It only means my decision has power. When you go silent, you disrupt the script they rely on. Narcissists thrive on predictability. They know your emotional buttons, your likely responses, your next move. Silence fractures that pattern. In a way, it is like turning the tables. They're used to discarding you, but now you are the one discarding them through silence. And why? Because you have had enough. You have chosen no more games, no more rehearsed dances, no more predictable exchanges. Suddenly, you are no longer the character they can read easily, and this unpredictability is your strongest weapon. Small Blue Diamond Psychologist Perspective. Silence here must not be mistaken for weakness. On the contrary, unpredictability signals growth. When you behave differently, you reclaim authorship of your own story. The narcissist's power depends on knowing your script, but by stepping outside the script, you reclaim the stage. To reinforce this, practice deliberate unpredictability, not for their sake, but for your own. Change routines, take up new habits, engage in activities that bring joy independent of them. These acts, while small, remind both your psyche and theirs that you are no longer confined to the roles they assigned you. And so, My friends, when you break the pattern, you do more than create confusion in the narcissist. You create freedom for yourself. The silence you hold is not empty. It is filled with intention, with boundaries, with a reclaiming of your inner life. Yes, they will struggle with not knowing your next move. But more importantly, you will discover the power of not being bound to their expectations. And that, truly, is the beginning of liberation. When you finally withdraw into silence, you are making a statement far deeper than words could ever carry. It is as though you are standing before the narcissist and declaring, "I refuse to play this role in your script. I refuse to be reduced to a pawn in your endless games. I see you now for who you are." And here lies the core of their unease, because they know that you have uncovered the truth. What they feared most has arrived. Your eyes are no longer clouded, your heart is no longer easily deceived, and their carefully crafted illusions begin to collapse. Small Blue Diamond Psychologist Perspective. This recognition is powerful, but it also brings grief. To see someone clearly after years of distortion is to mourn both the person you thought they were and the hope you carried. At this stage, the healthiest step is not to suppress the sorrow but to honor it. Talk it out with someone safe, write letters you never send, or sit with a counselor who can help untangle the threads of love and illusion. Healing begins when clarity is joined by compassion for yourself. Yet for the narcissist, your silence is not closure, it is provocation. In their world, silence does not mean peace, it means rebellion. And rebellion must be punished. They will resurface, not with apologies or a tender wish to rebuild, but with strategies designed to test your defenses. They will attempt to reopen contact, weaving a web where the initial message feels harmless, even nostalgic. But beneath it lies the same goal: to re-establish control, to remind you of your place in their narrative, and to punish you for daring to step outside it. Small Blue Diamond Psychologist Perspective. Understanding this motive is crucial. Many people relapse into the cycle because they misinterpret resurfacing as remorse. To prevent this, remind yourself, their return is not love, it is strategy. Each time you feel tempted to respond, pause and ask, does this message carry responsibility and genuine care, or is it pulling me back into confusion? Developing this awareness allows you to respond with clarity or not respond at all. A therapist might encourage creating a pause practice where you commit to waiting 24 hours before replying to any message. In that pause, truth often reveals itself. This is the painful conundrum. In most ordinary breakups, when former lovers reappear, it is often to reconcile, to share regrets, to seek some form of closure. But with a narcissist, the rules invert. Their contact is not about reconciliation. It is about reclaiming territory. It is not about love. It is about punishment. Their mind whispers, "How dare you ignore me? How dare you step outside my control?" And so they move not toward harmony but toward vengeance dressed as intimacy. Small Blue Diamond Psychologist Perspective. The solution here is to anchor yourself in a simple truth. Your healing does not require their closure. Closure is something you create within, not something they grant. Practices such as writing an unsent goodbye letter or ritual acts of release, burning old notes, returning items, rearranging spaces, can symbolically close chapters. This way, when they reappear, you no longer wait for their explanation. You stand firm in your own resolution. The greatest move you can make, then, is not a dramatic confrontation, but the quiet, steady continuation of silence. Silence, maintained with purpose, becomes your shield and your power. For those of you who share assets or children, I know this silence cannot be absolute. But even here, you can transform it into what psychologists call minimal contact. Offer only what is necessary, short, neutral responses without emotional charge. When asked, "How are you?" answer briefly, "I'm fine." When pressed for details, you give none. It may feel unnatural at first, but remember, every unnecessary detail is a doorway for manipulation. Small Blue Diamond Psychologist Perspective. The key practice here is boundary clarity. One effective method is the gray rock technique, becoming as uninteresting as a stone. You do not offer fuel for drama. You do not show sparks of anger or longing. This keeps your energy intact and reduces opportunities for them to exploit. Psychologists often remind clients, boundaries are not about keeping others out. They are about keeping yourself safe within. By minimizing the energy you give, you protect the core of your being. And let us reflect on the cycle itself. How many times, dear friends, have you walked away only to return? How many times did hope convince you that this time will be different? For some, this cycle has lasted months. For others, years. Each silence you offered was secretly burdened with a wish that they would awaken, realize your worth, and be transformed by sudden clarity. Yet, the lesson of experience is harsh. Silence does not trigger their self-awareness. It only unsettles their control. Small Blue Diamond Psychologist Perspective. Breaking this cycle requires replacing hope for their change with commitment to your own growth. Instead of waiting for their epiphany, create your own. Ask, what do I want my life to feel like a year from now? 5 years from now? Then take one small step daily toward that vision. Learning, creating, healing, reconnecting with joy. Therapy often uses future visualization to strengthen resolve. When you can clearly imagine a life beyond them, you are less likely to return to a cycle that only drains you. Let us be honest with ourselves. The story we hope for, the fantasy of sudden change, of a heart that transforms overnight, of a love finally given in the way we have longed for, does not arrive. That is not how this works. The path to freedom begins not in holding on to fantasy, but in daring to see reality as it is. To break free, you must look directly into the mind of the narcissist to understand how they think, how they live, and how they behave. This is not to justify them, but to grasp the truth. They cannot love in the way you imagine, and even when love stands before them, they do not recognize it. Small Blue Diamond Psychologist Perspective. The first step in healing is shifting expectation into acceptance. Hope, when misdirected, becomes a chain. By learning how narcissists truly operate, you protect yourself from the endless cycle of disappointment. A helpful practice is to write 2 lists, one for who you wish they were and another for who they have consistently shown themselves to be. When you see those lists side by side, the contrast creates clarity, and clarity is the beginning of liberation. At this point, intelligence and discernment become your greatest allies. You must see the narcissist as they are, not as you dream them to be, because they are not going to change. They are not going to suddenly start loving differently. And when you withdraw from them, when you dare to ignore, you strike at their deepest wound, the fear of irrelevance. For them, being dismissed is intolerable, and so they retaliate. They will attempt to pull you back into their game, because your silence is not just absence, it is exposure. It shows that their mask no longer works on you. Small Blue Diamond Psychologist Perspective. Expect retaliation not as a surprise, but as part of the process. Psychologists often recommend preparing for these attempts in advance. Save their number under a neutral label, turn off notifications, and establish a plan for how you will respond, or not respond, if they reappear. Preparing ahead transforms the moment of resurfacing from a shock into a test you are ready to pass. And here lies the hidden blessing. Ignoring a narcissist is not only an act of resistance, it is also a turning point for your own life. Silence grants you space in the mind to think without distortion, space in the heart to breathe without intrusion, and space in the spirit to feel who you are when no one is gaslighting you. Without their words polluting your thoughts, you begin to see reality in sharper colors. In that stillness, you realize something profound. You deserve better. You deserve a life where love is not a battlefield, where tenderness is not weaponized, where your worth does not depend on someone else's manipulation. Small Blue Diamond Psychologist Perspective. This stage is about reclaiming inner ground. Practices such as mindfulness meditation or reflective journaling can anchor the mind when doubts creep in. Write down daily what you notice about yourself without them. Your energy, your clarity, your peace. Over time, these notes become a mirror, showing you how much stronger you are outside the cycle. Do not misunderstand. This is not about tolerating someone who buries you under their lies and manipulations. This is about rising above the fog and holding on to the clarity even when it hurts. Yes, there is pain. Pain in letting go. Pain in facing the truth. But beyond that pain lies the clarity that saves. The narcissist will always try to stab with words, always attempt to trigger old wounds, always seek to crawl back under your skin. But remember, their well-being has never been the concern. Their only true concern is themselves and what they can extract without giving anything in return. Small Blue Diamond Psychologist Perspective. When hurtful words arrive, practice what therapists call cognitive reframing. Instead of asking, "Why are they doing this to me?" shift the frame. This is who they are. It is not about my worth. It is about their pattern. Reframing allows you to stop internalizing their cruelty and to see it as evidence of why boundaries are necessary. And so we ask, what are you truly seeking? Is it closure, understanding, truth? If so, let me tell you, you will not find it from them. Closure does not come from the one who wounded you. It comes from within. Walking away is not an act of abandonment. It is an act of empowerment. Silence becomes the sanctuary where growth takes root, where healing begins. In that quiet, you discover your power. Small Blue Diamond Psychologist Perspective. One healing exercise is to create your own ritual of closure. Write down everything you wish they would say. Then respond as though you were speaking to yourself with compassion. Seal the letters and set them aside, or burn them in a safe place as a symbol of release. These rituals help the psyche close the loop so you do not depend on them for peace. But be prepared. Ignoring a narcissist is a double-edged path. On one side, it empowers you. On the other, it will test you. It will challenge your boundaries, unsettle you when they lash out, and even make you doubt your decision at times. Yet the greatest gift of all emerges slowly and surely. You will see the truth. No more illusions, no more magic tricks, no more blindness. For the first time, you will see the narcissist as they are, and you will see yourself clearly too. And when clarity arrives, you will begin to choose yourself first, again and again. Small Blue Diamond Psychologist Perspective. At this stage, self-care is no longer optional. It is survival. Create daily routines that nourish your body and mind. Exercise, sleep, supportive conversations, even small joys like music or nature. These are not luxuries. They are anchors. Psychologists emphasize that putting yourself first is not selfishness but sanity. Boundaries and self-care are not walls. They are the soil in which your healing can grow. So take care of yourself. Place yourself at the center of your life. That is not only the way forward, it is the way out. What happens when you finally ignore a narcissist? Many people assume that